This video is for people who've been waking up between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m. enough to get you to a point where you're looking it up online wondering what the heck is going on. Maybe you've been waking up at the exact same time every night. Maybe every night at 3:33 on the dot, you look over and there are those numbers. Why is this happening? What does it mean? I made this video because this happened to me years ago. And when I looked it up online, I saw a couple of different perspectives, neither of which really rang true to me. One of them was like your Western sciences perspective. It's just increased cortisol. You're going through stress in your life, yada, yada. Tell me something I don't know. We're all stressed. I had a feeling that was at the very least the mere surface level reason of why I was waking up. I don't know about you, but when I was doing this, when I was going through this, it felt like there was a reason. There was like a deeper reason. I didn't understand it, but I knew intuitively there was something going on here beyond what I was being told by, WebMD and things like that. And then you have your spiritual perspective, which to me also seemed off. A lot of it was very fear-based and superstitious and, I don't know, generic, you could say. And what I can tell you, and what I'm going to tell you in this video, is what I came to discover about this powerful window of time. Just as you might feel intuitively, even if you can't explain it, there's a reason why this is happening to you. And it is very important. It could mark a very significant and positive transition you're now going through in your life, both of the spiritual nature I have come to find, but also in your life situation, with your relationships, with your career, maybe with just the chapter of your life, the theme you've been working with might be about to change. And people can have this experience as a signpost that this positive upgrade is taking place in your life. And that's what this video is going to be about. I'm going to share with you the 3 main reasons that I was waking up between 3 and 5 a.m. But not just me, not just one guy. There's no point of making a video if that's all this is based on. For the last 7 years, I've been what you can call, for lack of a better term, like a spiritual coach, even though I don't really care for that term. I've been helping people and working with people who are going through a spiritual awakening, basically. And what I found is that it's a very common thing, people waking up between 3 and 5 a.m., oftentimes, again, at the exact same time. And this video is going to share with you what has happened to me and what has happened to them and what very well might be happening to you right now. Number 1, you might have something really big to let go of in your life. This could be external, but most likely is internal. It might be something buried very deeply, a deeply ingrained belief about yourself, about life. Maybe it's an old pattern, some type of internal block that is basically in the way of you making this transition into this new version of yourself. And as what I found is, as these energies or old emotions or these triggers are like coming up to be released or cleansed or let go of, temporarily it's like an agitation to the physical body where you might relate with what Western science is saying. Yeah, you might feel more stressed. I know when I go through phases like this, when I'm waking up between 3 and 5 a.m., I am more stressed. I can feel like I'm operating in like a fight or flight mentality. And my mind can say, oh, it's because of this. It's because of this person. It's because of my job. It's because of, fill in the blank. But oftentimes these external circumstances are only a pale reflection of the deeper origin of it. For example, I remember when I was going through this, like in the most major way, about 5 or 6 years ago, I knew it was time for me to move on from my career. I was a fitness trainer at the time. I also grew medical marijuana in my basement. I had like 2 jobs, 2 careers basically. And I just knew that there was something more for me. I knew that both careers were parallel to one another, becoming unsatisfying. I found myself like really wanting more depth. I wanted to help people in a deeper way, even more so than what I was doing with the fitness. But I was so like used to it. I was used to my careers. They provided me financial resources to feed my family. I have 3 kids, a wife, dog, cat, a home. And also they were very intertwined with my identity. Everyone that knew me knew me as like the fitness trainer and the grower, the guy who could grow good weed, that kind of thing. So even though they both were not satisfying me, I clung to them because I was afraid. I was afraid of the unknown. I was afraid to admit to myself I didn't know who I was without these things. Who am I? It felt like I was starting from scratch at 30-something years old. So consequently, I clung to these situations. And I found myself waking up each night, around 3 to 5 a.m. Yes, oftentimes at the exact same time, almost to further what I already knew, which was that someone or something, probably my inner being, is trying to tell me something, trying to urge me to do something. And in my case, it was to let go of the identity attached to being Victor, the personal trainer and the grower, and to kind of admit that my next step in life is to kind of forge out there into the unknown. And it was so scary. And finally, what stopped it, actually, without going too far off on a tangent, I would find myself, as I mentioned, waking up every night around that time. And I would see like the same thing on the clock, which would sort of freak me out a little bit. But also there'd always be, for me, a particular feeling. And the feeling was better described as a knowing. I woke up, and when I saw those numbers, I knew I was not being who I really am. I was not moving on in life. And I knew at that time, like logically, for me, the next move was to stop growing marijuana, which seems stupid because I was like in the middle of a crop, and I put it takes money and energy to like get it going. And I told myself, I gotta wait for this to be done. But every night I wake up, I'd have this like knot in my chest, knowing I just had this intuitive sense, I gotta stop growing marijuana. My next step, I knew, would not reveal itself until I let go of the past. But it was so ludicrous to me and made no sense on paper, so I just didn't do it. Well, eventually what would happen to me, this happened so much, I finally found myself where I would sort of heed the call. I'd wake up at 3:35 a.m. or something. I'd have that same feeling. I'd go downstairs into my basement where they were growing, and I would turn the lights off. And any of you growers out there know you can't just turn the lights off in the middle of a cycle. It's very bad. It can ruin the whole crop, just that one little mistake, honestly. So for me, turning the lights off was basically like, in a formal way, saying goodbye to the past. And what would happen every time, as those lights would go off, that feeling, that like anxiety in my stomach and chest would just lift off me, almost like water evaporating off of me. And I would feel so good. I felt so light. I felt free. It was so obvious. This was like the move to make. My soul finally felt at peace. And I would go upstairs all proud of my faithful efforts, trusting in the divine, trusting in my intuition. And I'd sometimes even wake my wife up, my wife Patty. I'd be like, babe, I did it. Because she knew I was like bugging out about this. Babe, I did it. Oh, good, honey, go back to sleep, I'd go back to sleep. And I'd wake up the next day. And then like the reality of what had just happened would click in. The fact that I was like saying goodbye to thousands of dollars, the fact that I'd wasted all this time and money and effort, and I would like get myself all worked up, and I'd run downstairs, I'd flip the lights back on, I'd try to make sure everything's okay. And this thing happened over and over and over. I'd wake up, I'd see the freaking numbers, I'd have the feeling in my chest, I'd go downstairs knowing in my heart this is the move to make, even though it made no sense. I'd flip the lights off, I'd wake up the next day, I'd freak out, I'd turn them back on. So finally, I went down there one night and I chopped those plants down. We had these big like hedge, I think it's called a hedge, like hedge clippers, like scissors, like this long basically. And I was like, pop, 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 pop. No turning back. And shortly after that, I closed down my gym and I faced the unknown with fear and trepidation and anxiety and worry, yes. But as I finally let go, not only of my past circumstance, but also again to the identity, because now I was starting over again, that was when new stuff started coming into me. New ideas, new inspirations, I would say new guidance, like internal guidance as to like what to do next with my life. Shortly after that, my whole family moved from Michigan to California. I became more serious about my YouTube channel. It started to grow. I started coaching people. I started quickly making an income that replaced what I was making previously. And my life on all levels, including my identity, suddenly felt a lot more expansive, a lot more me. And it was well worth it, even though quite scary at the time. And I know some of you are thinking right now, Victor, dude, there's nothing crazy. There's no big transition happening in my life, but I am waking up around this time. I am relating somewhat to what you're going through. So for a lot of people, I found it's not super, mine was kind of both internal and external. A lot of people, it's just internal. It might just be a pattern. It might just be a way of viewing yourself or life, or a way of relating with people in your life that's causing you pain and has caused you pain for so long. For example, one of the things that I've been kind of going through recently that relates to this more so on an internal level, just to give you an example of how deep the rabbit hole can go. What started out for me was financial concerns. Some different things in my business were not going as planned and as expected. And that caused me to have like this familiar like fight or flight type of anxiety, which was causing me to wake up at the same time each night with this like type of worry energy. But what I've learned, again, it's not always to be taken at face value. I could have easily said, oh, this is happening because of this. It makes sense. I'll get over it. Things will be fine. Another reason, which relates a lot to what I just said, is that this happens sometimes to remind us logical, sort of heady human beings that there's more to life than meets the eye. We all kind of have times in our life where we feel that or we wonder about that. But when you start to like wake up at the exact same time every night, it does start to make you wonder what the hell's going on. Like the way I look at it is like, it's one thing to wake up at the exact same time every day. We don't really know when we wake up because, unless you look at the clock the second you wake up. But what really tripped me out is the fact that the time between I actually woke up and when I actually looked at the clock would vary greatly for obvious reasons. It would fluctuate. But the time I happened to look at the clock was like the exact same moment. I've had it where one of the ones for me was like 3:33. I've had it where I'd literally look at the clock for like maybe the second or third day in a row or night in a row, and it would be transitioning between 3:32 and 3:33. And it's not just the numbers. It's not just the multitude of successive coincidences that's perplexing. It's, for me, it was like those numbers were staring at me, almost like they were like trying to tell me something. And what I found is that they were trying to tell me something. And that something is that there is more that meets the eye in life. Because at the time for me, and all the time this has happened, quite honestly, I've been in a big transition, a big like dark night of the soul, as some people call it. And during these times, the last thing people generally have is a plan, some kind of certainty. Oh, this is going to happen, and then this is going to come in, and I'm going to feel safe the whole time. It's very predictable, right? No, you might feel like the rug has been ripped out of you spiritually, emotionally, and maybe even literally in your life, and you feel lost. You feel like there's no guidance whatsoever. But these numbers can sometimes come in to say, listen, you just got to look deeper. There is guidance. There's always guidance. And for me, seeing those numbers helped me become aware of the guidance. I had no actual guidance, no plan of action. No one to tell me, here's what to do, here's why it's going to work, here's why you can relax, it's all gravy. No, nothing like that. But I had an internal compass, you could say. I had my intuition was heightened around that time, and yours might be as well. You might just have a knowing of what needs to be done. You might have a knowing of what this all means. What are you being asked to let go of? What pattern, what habit, what belief? You might be able to access even earlier memories, one time I was going through this as an example, at a time in my life when I was going through a lot of financial hardship and like my finances were tripping me up. And initially I thought, oh, you're worried, you're waking up because you're running out of money or something. But what I gleaned from that, because I've learned to associate these numbers with a heightened sense of intuition, and enhance the ability to look deeply into my unconscious, into my shadow, and then pull out these gems of wisdom and healings, I concluded at that time that the real thing I was concerned about, the real reason I was waking myself up at night, was because I didn't think I could handle it. I realized I had gone through my entire life not really believing in myself. I had this belief that if I'm presented with a circumstance in life, there's a good chance I'm not going to be able to handle it. I don't believe in my ability to weather the storm, to deal with the challenge, etc. And anyway, all this was happening, the financial, situation, the waking up between 3 and 5 a.m. But out of that, I realized that I can handle things. I realized that belief is very old and false. I do actually believe in myself. I proved to myself I can deal with certain things. And as I was having this kind of epiphany, I started thinking back into my life, and I started thinking back into like my early childhood. My parents, I love them so much, but if you ask them like, how did you feel when you had kids? And I was the first child, by the way. And they say they were terrified. They didn't know, they had a lot of fear basically raising me. And I think as a young kid, I picked up on their fear. And at that time, I think I interpreted it like they don't trust in me. They don't believe in me because they're always afraid and worried all the time. They couldn't help it. I'm not blaming them. But that sort of seeped into me, this sense that I can't handle life on life's terms. And here I was in this sort of financial situation that was triggering these old feelings. But because of the numbers, because I had learned to, again, associate these numbers with an enhanced intuition, I was able to come to quite a nice healing. And the healing was like, you got this. You know you got this. And as that happened, shortly after that, my finances were fine. The external circumstance resolved itself. And even before that, I started sleeping like a baby because I got the message. What is your life? What are these numbers trying to tell you about yourself? Or maybe you're telling yourself something about yourself, like me, that's just not true. Anyway, you can use this. You can inquire within yourself and probably give yourself quite an amazing breakthrough, my friend. This guidance is also there to lead you, if it relates to you, like my story, into a new circumstance. Maybe you're going through a transition right now as well. A lot of people do go through career transitions with their spiritual awakening, because you may have fallen into something that made sense at the time, or maybe your mom and dad pushed you into it, or maybe you just were sort of forced to choose a career path at a young age. And anyway, now you're finding yourself more and you're realizing this ain't it. This is not going to work. But it's a very scary thing on a lot of different levels, as I've discussed, to transition your career. And for you, it might be something else. Maybe it's where you live, your relationship, whatever. And I remember for me, when I was making my big transition from the trainer and the fitness, the weed guy, into like being like the spiritual YouTuber, basically, the coach, there was so much unknown. I didn't know how it was going to work. How is this going to work? How am I going to do it? It seemed impossible. It seemed like this insurmountable obstacle and mountain to climb. But I can tell you this, looking back, I always knew what I needed to know in the moment. Oh, how I wished I had the map to see it all. I never did. But I always had like a sense, sometimes a faint knowing that I just got to do this. I just got to chop those plants down in my basement, even though it's so stupid on paper. I just know it's got to happen. I just know I have to do this next move. It always came. I've learned that I can trust, we can trust our intuition. There's a deeper part of us that will guide you, my friend, if you allow it to. And for me, just waking up at the same time over and over, it it allowed me to believe in something greater than myself a bit more easily. And it was that belief, that faith, that I do have some type of internal compass that seems divine in nature. I don't know, it's speculation, that I believe I can trust in. And it did. For me, my life has gotten so amazing. And so it's been like on a constant state of expansion, honestly, ever since I chose around that time to start trusting my intuition that was presenting itself more and more loudly during these times. Before I go, my friend, I want to share with you a tip that I really believe will help you a lot if you relate to this video and find yourself in a transition. And it's a very simple tip. It's this: don't take stock too early. A lot of times your intuition will guide you, into a direction that you have high hopes for, but then it turns out really poorly. Like things don't go the way you thought. But what I've learned is sometimes these like what seem like problems are actually helpful. What comes to mind is this awesome story that Alan Watts, you know Alan Watts, he's an amazing spiritual teacher. And he told this story about this old Chinese farmer. This old Chinese farmer one day woke up and his horse, one of his beautiful wild horses, ran away. And all the friends came around and said, "Oh, how unfortunate that your horse ran away." And the Chinese farmer was wise. So he said, maybe, we'll see. Sure enough, the very next day, that horse came back to the farm with seven or eight other wild horses. And then the townspeople came and said, "Oh my goodness, what a blessing. Things are going so well for you. You should be so happy." And the Chinese farmer said, maybe. The next day, the Chinese farmer's son got on one of the horses and fell off and broke their leg. "Oh, how unfortunate," everyone said. You probably by now know the response, maybe. Recently, or shortly after that, there was a big draft, and a lot of people were drafted to go to war. Sure enough, this son of his was drafted to go off to fight in a war. But because of his broken leg, he didn't have to go. And the people came around and said, "Oh my God, you're so lucky, you're so blessed." Maybe. You just never know, my friends. I remember when I was going through that exact transition that I was talking about, after I had let go of the gym and let go of the grow, before my business that I have now sort of started to support me, I was sliding into financial debt. I was following my faith, following my intuition, but things are not looking good at all on paper. And I was in financial debt. I was in about $50,000 of credit card debt, to be exact. And I have 3 children. By that time, we were living in a travel trailer. Our life had really reduced itself about as much as it possibly can before being actually homeless. But around that time, my YouTube channel was like picking up steam, and things were, seemingly to go in a positive direction. But around that time, I had this brilliant idea one day on a walk. And the idea was I'm going to launch a new course, a new like digital product basically to my audience. And I thought to myself, if I can make another $2,000 a month or something from this course, then we'll finally, at the very least, be able to pay our bills. And it felt like it's the only idea I could come up with, but because all my credit cards were maxed out, it had to work. I was literally at the brink of absolute like bankruptcy or homelessness, that kind of thing. And I have a family. It was a huge deal. So all my money, all my like energy was going into this course. So I spent about a month or so building out this course. I poured my heart and soul into it. It was the biggest course I ever built. And finally I launched it to my audience, and I was so nervous because I knew it had to work. But what do you think happened? It didn't work. I sold, guess how many I sold? 2. It was $97. I made $200. Wasn't going to cut it. And that was like a few days of groceries with all these freaking kids, the amount they eat. And I was absolutely devastated. I was so upset. I used to at times like yell at my spirit guides as if they were to be blamed, or my higher self, my spirit. I'd say, "What the hell's the matter with you? I've been trusting you, and look where you put me." I had a bunch of hissy fits. But eventually, after like maybe a few days of wallowing, I had a thought that when it happened, it almost seemed like, why didn't I have this thought before? And the thought was, maybe your audience doesn't want to buy your courses, and maybe they want to work with you. Maybe they would like to coach with you. And I needed that failed course launch to have that idea. And that idea, once it took root within 1 week, because I ran a gym and I knew how to get clients and that kind of thing, within 1 week I had 35 clients and was making like 10K a month. And it was dependent upon that failure. Thank God for that failure. The amount of people I've been able to work with over the years and help and get to just meet from all over the world, cool, badass folks, never would have happened had I not failed miserably. But luckily, I didn't take stock too early. By that time, I did have some semblance of faith that everything does happen for a reason. So anyways, my friends, if you find yourself in a transition like that, I'm going to leave you with that in case it helps you. Also, before I go, because I haven't mentioned it in quite a few YouTube videos, I have a gift I give to all my new followers and also people who've been watching me and haven't gotten it yet. It's a free gift. It's a free somatic release breathwork ceremony. Somatic release breathwork is like a trauma healing modality. It's not just breathing to feel calm. It's a way of releasing pent-up energy, releasing trauma, releasing old beliefs, things like that. It's extremely powerful. I've taken probably 10 to 15,000 people through it in big groups over the years. And what I have for you today is a recording of one of those sessions for free. I'm going to leave a link down below if you want to check it out. And if it resonates, and if not, that's cool too. I'll see you in the next video. Have an amazing day, my friends. Thank you so much. Peace.